So welcome back to my channel. This is Gamer Dom, and times for another rambles of a fool, and a look back at what's happening and a little bit look forward of what's happening in World of Tanks this week. So Gamescon is on in Germany. This is one of the big annual shindigs that Wargaming get involved in. I think it's happening somewhere in Germany. Cologne, there you go. This week. Beautiful city, Cologne. Haven't been there for many years. Beautiful place. Anyway, some interesting stuff coming out of Gamescom, and I expect more will progress as the week goes on. Generally, it's an opportunity where they talk about upcoming developments. There's generally some surprise news. There's generally some premiums and other stuff, and lots of goodies that come out. So we'll talk about that. Outside of that, there's an interesting Q&A with one of their developers that we'll talk about, looking at particularly around tier 9 and tier 10 premium tanks and how the Chinese server operates. More buffs and nerfs afoot within tech trees, and a brand new American light tank on the tech tree, and changes to the American tech tree as a result. The other things we'll be looking at is buffs and nerfs to, well, actually mainly buffs, to be honest, to tier 10 light tanks. Makes me laugh because they tested them out extensively on the test server and the sandbox. Everyone thought they were fabulous, really good, and they nerfed the bejesus out of them before they brought them into the game. And I don't play that many tier 10 games, but I don't see that many light tanks out there. The high level tier 9 tier 10 light tanks being played. Be interesting to see whether people think differently, and so I think they've looked at the stats and thought, oh, we overdid it, and they're looking to buff a lot of the tier 10s, so that'll be interesting too. So let's crack on first of all before I won't ramble on far too long. So Gamescom, great opportunity for us to spend more money with Wargaming, and they love it when we do, of course. So there's a couple of very good specials on, so if you're looking to unlock and buy some new tanks, this is the weekend to do it. So from the 23rd, so that is today, when I'm videoing this, which is the Wednesday, hang on, sorry, specials start on the 23rd, the actual bonuses and discounts happen on the 24th. Right, so 24th of August through to the 28th of August, there is ×5 experience for the first victory of the day. 15% discount on tier 8s, 9s and 10s on the regular tech tree. That is perfect timing. I've just unlocked the type 5 heavy. Give it to me, baby. 30% on regular tier 6 and 7s, and 15% off all premium tier 8 tanks. Also, if you're looking to buy premium time, 15% off 180 days and 15% off 360 days. There's also 50% discount on insignia and emblems and camo for your tanks, so get painting them up if you want to, and 50% on all consumables. Now, I would recommend wholeheartedly, and I'm sure most of you do this already, but if you've got credits sitting around, then I would spend every penny you have, unless you're particularly saving for something, but every penny you have on replacement fire extinguishers and medical kits and repair kits, because you will use them, and this 50% discount is a huge bonus. And you will run out of, I buy thousands each time, and I still run out by the end of, well, by the time another incentive comes around. But of course you're saving 50%, so every time you burn through a repair kit, you're not having to pay for it anymore, because you've already got them in the shop, already got them in your depot, which means you make 5,000 more credits if it's a small one, each game, which is a much better system to work. So was it 10,000? Sorry, 10,000 credits more. So buy consumables. And if you're looking for a tier 10 and tier 9, now is the time to buy that as well. Beautiful. There's also submissions, so I'm assuming these will run from the 23rd, so from the Wednesday. There's the virtual goodie bag, so if you can earn 15,000 XP over any number of battles, as long as you finish in the top 10 of your team by base XP. And the reason why they do that is to stop bots, basically, because generally you have to have done something to get into the top 10. So you will get 10 large repair kits, you will get 10 automatic fire extinguishers, and 10 personal reserves of plus 100% XP for 2 hours. If you do that mission 3 times in the next few days, you will get an extra day of premium for free, so that's pretty good. There's also some of the, in my view, some of the best tier 6 and tier 7 premium tanks available, being offered up in special deals from Wednesday through till the 1st of September, so you've got plenty of time for these. There's the tier 7 tank destroyer, Russian tank destroyer, the IS-122S, the Rudy, the tier 6 Russian medium tank, T-34-85 with a dog, the IS-2, which is the tier 7 Russian premium heavy tank, the copy of the IS, not to be confused with the Chinese version. There's the Cromwell B, the tier 6 British medium tank, and the Thunderbolt, the tier 6 American medium tank. All available in packages with Brothers-in-Arms, crews, and various other goodies, or as a standalone tank just with the crew and the garage slot and the tank. So if you're interested in any of those are, I would say without question, without you know, I forgot, but without exception, that's what I mean, all of these tanks are excellent vehicles and well worth you buying if you want a lower tier. Of course, they're not going to generate the same kind of credits that tier 8 will do, but they're still pretty good. And in some ways, with the new matchmaking, tier 7s, in my view, are actually one of the stronger tiers now. So premium at tier 7, I think, is a good investment. Personally, I'm not encouraging you to spend money. Anyway, other stuff we are hearing from Gamescon, and I love this one. So this is the Armored Patrol. Suggestions that an Italian tech tree might be revealed at Gamescom, and they're quoting an undisclosed source. That's always slightly dodgy. That the Italian tree will be revealed this year and not the Polish one. The reason for that is that they've got a lot more. Sorry about all the noise going off here. My other PC's pinging away. The Italian. So the reason is they've got more material for the Italians, and that's mainly because the Italians had a very developed tank program in the early part of, well, between the wars and in the early part of the Second World War, and they had a number of very unique tanks. The Polish didn't have anywhere near as many, mainly because obviously the war for them, in terms of conventional sense, finished very early, whereas the Italians fought on for obviously quite a while, and continued to develop their own armour. Now, post-war, they obviously started to use a lot of other copies and what have you, but at least it means in the lower tiers, there's quite a lot of Italian vehicles out there that genuinely existed, and probably a lot more that were blueprints and what have you. So I can see the logic of that. I'm also quite excited about that. I have a strange fascination for Italian Second World War tanks. I don't know why that is, and I really need some treatment for it. But I used to do a lot of tabletop wargaming, and while everyone else rushed for German Tigers and American Shermans and what have you, I went for the Italians. I don't know why, but I did. So I have masses of little Italian tanks around the place, and they are all, without exception, crap. The TDs aren't bad. But don't get me started on that. Anyway, so grain of salt with that. It may not be true, but it's very interesting nonetheless. And it's very interesting if it is the case that they're delaying the Polish tree, that they're doing that because we know how much money they made, or rumoured to have made, with the Poodle, the tier 6 premium Polish tank. And we know the main reason for that is how many Polish players there are playing this game. It's one of the bigger communities, so a Polish tech tree is going to be very popular indeed. So it's interesting that if this is true, that they're not going to bring that one out immediately. Well, but we'll see. As I say, pinch of salt. We don't know whether it's true or not. So sadly, Harkonnen at the Daily Bounce has poured cold water on my dream of Italian tanks to come to World of Tanks anytime soon. Anyway, he's saying it's fake news. he points out to a session that happened some time ago, Q&A on the Russian forum, that said that Italians weren't coming anywhere soon, that actually the Poles are going to be next. And it seems to be a bit of a joke that somebody's playing, maybe by some Polish people. Anyway, there you go. So he says he doesn't expect to see Italians anytime soon, and it will be the Polish next. And I suppose he points out quite rightly that why would they have spent all the time producing a Polish tank? Well, not that they spent an awful lot of time with that, they just rebrushed a previous tank, but anyway. And building out the tech tree if they're not going to then introduce it next and bring in Italians, which they haven't talked about at all yet. So we'll see. We'll see in due course. He's actually saying he doesn't expect to see any major announcements at Gamescom, just some HD maps and repetition of stuff we already know about. So we shall see. But I'm holding out for my eye ties. You know you want them. So other interesting developments from Gamescom so far, and as I say, this will be a moving feast as it comes forward. So somebody spotted and reported on the Armoured Patrol blog that if you look carefully in your Gamescom garage, you can see a Chieftain Mark 6. Beautiful tank, isn't it? Now, background on this is that there is a running Ferrari, we call it Ferrari because I like that word, going on about why the hell the Chieftain 6 is not in the game. There are X number of fake tanks and blueprint tanks and prototype tanks in the game, but the Chieftain 6 existed. It was a genuine battle tank used by the British Army and others for that matter, and yet it has never been put into the game. And wargaming is a constant source of frustration for players who like the British lines, the British tanks, that this has never been brought in. So intriguing and a bit of a tease from wargaming maybe, or is it actually finally going to come? Be very, very interesting. Other thing that they picked up on, which are less sort of interesting for me anyway at the moment, so showcases of a couple of new HD maps. I don't give a stuff about HD maps, frankly. I want new maps, not HD ones, but hey, a couple of them. Possible new unique premium tanks and camouflages. Okay, and for those of you console peasants, they're acquiring support for the 4K resolution on the Xbox One X, and they're looking to launch World of Tanks on Microsoft's new console in November, or November 7th, they're saying. So that's interesting indeed. Also, just while I'm here, this warning and general warning to everybody. I'm sure you guys are all, most of my audience is older, and we're all pretty wise to the world and the unpleasantness that is out there. They're reporting this site in Russia that is selling a Type 59 with Brothers in Arms crew and garage and everything else, and it is a fake site, and it's not even a very clever one. If you look, it's called Wargaming with an N, not an M, here, and it's a scam. And generally, word of advice on any of these external sites, and there's lots of them. People from time to time put things up about places where you can get gold for free or a lot cheaper than you can on the main site, blah blah blah. Now, it's not genuine. If it is a genuine external third-party site, it will be endorsed by World of Tanks, by Wargaming, and it will say so. In fact, it will probably say so on the World of Tanks forums. It will be, very clearly genuine site. There's a site in America, I can't think what it's called, maybe you get Tank Rewards, it might even be called Tank Rewards, and that's genuine, and by all accounts it's very, very good, and I wish we had it in EU, but and that's fine. But generally, if it smells fishy and it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So don't go and waste your time and money on it, and you probably get your cards scammed and all sorts of things, and it will impact on all sorts of things, not just your game. So avoid. So, World of Tanks developer Anton Pankov was recently interviewed on the developments of World of Tanks. This is on the Daily Bounce, recounting some of the conversation. So they talked about the Chinese tank destroyer line, which is coming out in 9.2, and I've done some videos on that on the test server. If you're interested, very interesting tech tree. I quite like most of them. They are largely Russian copies, but or sort of bastardizations. They're all entirely fake. There's pretty much without exception, they are fake tanks. Never existed, virtually never even. No prototypes were even built of them. But why is that? Why is that going to stop wargaming? So apparently there is already enough material for a self-propelled artillery, so an artillery branch for Chinese. But the question remains whether it will be released or not. There's a certain degree of unpopularity, should we say, of artillery, so we'll see whether that happens. The other thing is there were reports of this new Chinese Tier 9 premium tank destroyer, the WZ-120 GFT. They are saying that is for China only. Only. Yeah, we believe you, Wargame, because you've always been genuine when you said these things are only for one server or not going to be available again or what have you. But anyway, we'll have to believe them. But they're saying that we will get the Tier 8 version. Everywhere else outside China will get the Tier 8. And it was interesting. Part of the reason for this is how much abuse players get for buying premium high-tier tanks that are deemed to be OP. And Wargaming and this developer particularly talked about how unacceptable it would with the vast majority of the player base for a player who bought a Tier 9 or a Tier 10 premium tank, and therefore it's one of the reasons why they don't do it here. Whereas in China, it seems to be much more culturally acceptable to flash your cash and buy the very best tank. Even if it's completely overpowered and other people can't afford it. So, and I kind of get that. Every time there's a big new premium comes out and it's deemed to be overpowered by the prima donnas out there, there's all sorts of shit happens if you bought it. I've seen people team killed because they're driving a Defender, or particularly the Chrysler. So many people got abuse for that, and the free Foch campaign, all this kind of crap. So people really need to get lives. Anyway, so I get that. But they've also said that the Chinese server, which is run separately, so the Chinese server is a separate business, but obviously using material that Wargaming give them. There's obviously some kind of, I don't know how it works, but there's a lot of demands that have come from the Chinese thing about unique tanks, unique crews, and unique maps. And the developer's story was was very interesting about how much of this stuff there was coming, and that gets us on to the Waffenträger E100. So that was that OP Tier 10 German tank destroyer, and they're saying this is an example of one of these Chinese server requests. So it will be sold only in China as a very expensive bundle. And Anton is quoted as saying the money isn't worth the amount of negativity we and the owners of the tank would get if we sold it somewhere else. So there you go, right from the horse's mouth. And they're talking about a lot of players have been asking for Tier 9 and Tier 10 premiums, but Wargaming has serious reservations, particularly of Tier 9 tanks. And the reason why particularly Tier 9 tanks, premium tanks, is because obviously Tier 9s will fight Tier 7s, and that's not a fair match. If it's a very, very good Tier 9 premium, that's not fun. The plans to replace the FV215B with the Super Conqueror is a very recent one, and it's all down to one guy. Murazor is his fault, so yeah. Wargaming is planning to rebalance a lot of tanks, not just the higher tier ones. At the moment we're aiming at dozens, looking at a dozen that would fix the largest amounts of issues. So basically they're working through the tech trees, they're looking at how they need to buff and how they need to nerf various tanks based on their performance, and based on the power creep that there has been in the game recently. So expect more of this as we move forward, and I think they said somewhere that this will basically be working through till next year, sort of February, March. Here we go, down here, February, April time. We'll be looking at nerfing and buffing of tanks. So there's a lot more to come. They're looking at some of the Soviet branches. Well, there's a surprise. They're always looking at the Soviet branches, particularly the IS-4, whether it should be moved or replaced with players keeping it in their garage. But they're struggling to find a decent replacement. The best candidate is the ST2 or ST11, but that has 2 barrels. So that creates some challenges. Now, I personally would love to see double-barrel guns playing in the game. You know, things like the Grant and the Lee that have 2 guns. There were a lot of early war Russian equipment, particularly had a tendency to be very large vehicles with multiple gun barrels, basically to cover the blind spots and so forth within the tanks. And it would be lovely if Wargaming could work out a way to do it. Now, it seems to me World of Warships offers a good example of how this could work. So for those of you familiar with World of Warships, a lot of vessels have secondary armaments, so you don't specifically control them. There are some skills you can develop on your captains which allow you to prioritize certain other shipping with your secondary batteries, but largely they do their own thing. They come into range, they open up on the enemy. That's as simple as that. So while you control the main batteries and the torpedoes and that sort of thing. Now, it seemed to me that they could do a very similar thing in World of Tanks, but it would need a little bit of playing with, because you wouldn't necessarily want your secondary gun to open up automatically without you having the opportunity to tell it to. Because you can imagine you got yourself into a nice bush, hunkered down, ready to ambush that tank that's just about to drive in front of you, and suddenly your secondary gun opens up of its own volition, and you get absolutely bitch slapped for it. Yeah, that would be so good. So, but I think it's entirely feasible that these developers couldn't work out a way of making that work. So we shall see. We shall see with interest. But as well as grinding down the British line to get to the FV215B, you might want to think about working your way down the IS-4, because it sounds like both of those tanks are going to be swapped out at some point. Next patch will be 9.2.1. Okay. Anton believes that the introduction of the WZ111111 Model 5A, which is the new Chinese Tier 10 heavy tank, is making the IS-7 even more obsolete, so they're potentially going to do some more work on that. They are also looking at KV-5s and other preferential matchmaking tanks, and that's because they have seriously struggled in the new matchmaking, and it's causing a lot of discontent. And not bloody no no surprise there. I'm pissed off that none of my preferentials are any good anymore. I used to love playing my Super Pershing, my KV4, KV5 even, and I rarely ever play them anymore because the matchmaking has screwed them over. Wargaming are looking at that, to be fair, and it's a tough one, because they've said for a long time they want to get rid of preferential matchmaking tanks, but they also have this pathological fear of doing anything to any premiums that are in the game, and that goes back to some time ago, actually, with the Super Pershing itself, before my time of playing this game, so I don't know the whole ins and outs of it, but basically what I understand is the Super Pershing was buffed excessively, and then they nerfed it because it was excessively buffed. The problem was a lot of players had bought it because it was a good tank, and then they complained, quite rightly, this isn't what I paid for. You've changed the model, you've changed the whole thing. You know, it's like saying, I know your tank's got a penetration at tier 6 of 250 millimeters, and then they reduce it to 190 after you've bought it. You know, you probably wouldn't have bought it, right? So it created so much stink that they ended up paying a lot of people back for their tanks that they bought, and a lot of ill will and bad feeling was caused with players with Wargames' decisions. So that's why they are pathologically scared of making any significant changes to, or any changes at all, to premium tanks, and that's led to some really bad decisions in my mind. Tanks that really are completely over the top are not getting nerfed and allowed to continue. So I think that's a dangerous precedent, but they need to do something, and I understand it's a challenge. But I think if they worked out a sensible way of doing it, they told players about it, and gave you the option, you can either change your tank or keep it, or maybe with some kind of compensation if it is a big nerf, then that to me is a sensible way to go. So anyway, we shall see. Clearly they are looking at it, but something needs to happen with them. They are not good enough. Then I'm also looking at a new rating system. Looking for the stat twats out there who care about these things, crying about their stats. They're looking at a new ranking system. I don't give a stuff about that. Work's continuing on the mod portal. Now, this was something they talked about ages ago. But it's obviously taking some time to do. The idea was that you had a portal that you could go to, and all the mods that were allowed within the game would be there, and you could download them. It's safe in the knowledge that these were acceptable mods, and there was no risk of you being banned. And similarly, I guess the logical extension of that is that they could find a way to stop the game running if you tried to use mods that weren't on that portal, as a way of stopping all the illegal mods in the game. So, but it does look like this is taking a long time to develop. So there's currently no one working on the ability to hide player count stats, but the idea hasn't been scrapped. But they want to implement it correctly and decide what will be the effect. Again, this is our friends, the super uni scums and the stat twats, who bitch about the fact that they get targeted because of their stats, and don't like it. And Wargaming, as usual, are listening to them because they seem to care what they think more than regular players. But anyway, to me, yes, with things like XVM, you can see who the best players are statistically in the game. And in theory they can be targeted by artillery and so forth, but there's less artillery in most games now anyway, and I think if someone's a good player, that kind of comes with the territory, right? It's entirely the right tactic for you to focus fire on the best players. So if you're in a platoon, I know when we're in a platoon and we're up against somebody who is clearly a good player, we will try and focus him out and take him out of the game, because you know that generally if you can get rid of their best player, or several of their best players, chances are the rest of the team's going to fold, if it didn't cost you too much to take them down. And I don't have an issue with that particularly, but hey, stat twats, what do you expect? Rank battle tests will continue, but Wargaming has already a general final version ready. And changes will depend on how the next test goes. So rank battles is not gone away, it is coming, unfortunately, with all those bonds and all the other crap that goes with it. So hey, let me know what you think about those. Some interesting stuff. So talking about grand battles and 30v30s and rank battles, a Russian YouTuber visited Minsk recently and talked to some of the developers, and this was the outcome from that. There are plans to bring grand battles to other tiers, unlike rank battles. This was planned from the start, but depends on tests. So this is what you can do on test server right now, but only at tier 10. It's the 30v30 standard matches. So you don't get all the ranking stuff and all the tier, that you get in rank battles, but it's 30v30 on a much bigger map. At the moment, there's only one map, but there are plans to bring more in. Yeah, I think this is good, and I would love to see it at lower tiers as well. I think there's no reason why it couldn't be implemented, although it might be challenging in some tanks getting around. But hey, if you can get around a mouse on one of these big maps, then it can't be too bad, right? Grand Canyon map was scrapped and won't be introduced to Grand Battles. That was that one with a massive great canyon down the middle. I thought it was shit myself. I think it was Quickie Babe did a video on it and he loved it, but I thought it was just rubbish. It was just too we talk about corridors. Now that was absolute corridors, because there were like 3 bridges across. That was it. And okay, you had 2 levels of fighting, because you could fight down underneath in the canyon itself, or you could fight up above. but really, yeah, 3 crossing points, focusing on, yeah, no. According to stats, there won't be any problem with players running out of ammunition in grand battles. Battles are not set to last for 30 minutes, and yes, players might run out sometimes, but it's not critical and doesn't happen very often. So there you go. If you run out of bullets, it's your fault, not them. There was a slight increase in players with light tanks in the new mode, but there are more players queuing with artillery. So the question of artillery in the grand battles is now floating around. So it's true, there is more opportunity for light tanks to play a role in these bigger battles, as you would expect. There's bigger maps, they've got more cover, there's more opportunity for a fast light tank to get around. So I'm not surprised there's more lights. It's, you know, if you're taking out a tier 10 light and you get city map after city map after city map, you kind of lose heart. Whereas if you go into one of these big battles, it's kind of fun again. So, but artillery, there's 2. You know, I don't know how many you get. I think 4 you can get in artillery. Artillery in one of these 30v30s. Is that too many? It doesn't feel it. Although sometimes I've been on test server and suddenly you get hit by 4 artillery one after another. That's not so much fun. But hey, shit happens. About a third of players play World of Tanks on weak PCs, so that again is why they are trying to make sure that they bring in changes that are pretty good or easy enough for, you know, or have options that weaker PCs can run on, and a lot of those are in Russia, which is where their main player base is. So they clearly don't want to upset people there. Statistically, only 50% of players open the options menu, and even less ever change anything. So yeah, that so that's an interesting one. So if you are struggling with the frame rate you're getting, if you're struggling with the view you're getting, you don't like the radical you're getting, go and open up the options box and look at all the variety of things you can change in there. It's an eye-opener, and it's amazing. Only half players ever even open it, and even less make any changes. Wow. Well, I shouldn't be surprised, but I am. And there's no plans to introduce new medals for grand battles, like destroying 20 to 25 tanks. There is, however, the possibility of stretching the existing ones by a few kills, but nothing's been decided right now. So at the moment, ranked battles, grand battles are also an extremely good way for you to do some of those missions that you've been struggling to do. So the ones where you have to do, you know, 3,000, 4,000 damage to a TD. Well, of course, if there's double the number of tanks in the game, a lot easier to do those missions, isn't it? So, and at the moment you can do that. So, and it doesn't look like they're looking to change that anytime soon. So, interesting. Hey ho. So, some lots of interesting Q&A material always is around the time of Gamescom. So let's move on to light tanks. So, as I said in the intro, Wargaming were bringing tier 9 and tier 10 tanks a couple of patches ago. We've tried them all out on the test server and the sandbox. Most people loved them, thought they were fabulous, and then they nerfed them before they brought them into the game. They reduced their view range, they reduced their gun handling, and all sorts of things. And consequently, it's not very common to see many of these things out in the battlefield, and Wargaming realised, I think they made a cock up here. So they're looking at super testing some changes to the tier 10 lights. So the Sheridan, in the current state, it doesn't seem effective enough. We're planning to increase the damage on its 105mm while keeping the same reload time, so that will increase the damage per minute. So basically they're looking to increase damage, average damage from 360 to 390, and ammo rack capacity will go up as well from 37 shells to 42. So that's good news if you're a Sheridan driver. The T100 lightweight, the tier 10 Russian light tank, which I think is generally recognized as one of the better of the tier 10 lights. While this tank perfectly copes with the role of active spotter, its firepower lacks compared to its peers. Therefore, the vehicle's damage per minute will be improved. So they're looking at improving its reload time from 8.4 to 7.8, and also increasing its ammo rack capacity from 38 to 43. So good news there. The WZ132/1, the Chinese tier 10, that's again one of the more effective I think it's generally ranked. I haven't played it other than the test server, and it was a while ago, but from what I remember, this was the most fun I had in these light tanks. One of the better guns with a better alpha, and they're increasing its ammo count by 4 shells, so that's thing. The one that's causing a lot of consternation, well, let's get on to the French one first. So the AMX 13150, it says the French light tanks were generally intended not only to scout but also to cause damage. So they're increasing the alpha damage and increasing its basically to increase its effectiveness. So from 360 to 390 average damage, and you get an extra clip, basically 30 shells to 33 shells. Seems fair enough. Now the one that is causing most consternation, I think, of all the commentators I've seen, is the German tier 10, the Panzerwagen, the Rheinmetall Panzerwagen. So they're basically trying to change it to fit it into the sniper role. The stabilizing and aiming parameters will be improved, which will decrease the preparation time before a shot and increase the vehicle's survival rate in battle. But they've decreased the alpha on the gun, but increased its rate of fire and return. So now the problem with this is there's less cover in the games now, and such is the fantastic view range of heavy tanks nowadays, particularly at higher tiers, and medium tanks with equipment and decent crews, that light tanks have a hell of a job hiding. And the idea that a German light tank can be hiding in a bush and firing very, very accurately out of it is farcical, because you may get away with one shot, but if you try again, you are going to be spotted, and then you can kiss your ass goodbye. So I find this really odd. So they are basically nerfing its gun handling, well, its gun effect, its DPM and its damage, in return for better aim time, which you're never really going to be able to use. So dispersion during traverse and movement will be decreased by 22%, so that's good news. Turret traverse by 20%, which is good news again. Reload time goes down by a full second, 10 seconds to 9 seconds. Aim time from 1.9 to 1.6, so very fast. So it'll be able to swing around the gun and fire a shot very, very rapidly. But the standard damage has gone from 360 to 320, while they've given it another 5 shells. So I question whether that's terribly effective. I don't think the German one will be any more popular than it was at the moment. So so the other thing they're looking at doing is changing the American light tank tech tree. So again, this is part of what they've talked about for some time, a sort of logical progression in the tiers. So when you work up, you know that if you're coming down this T37, T71 Bulldog, let me make that bigger, there we go. So this is the current tech line they're looking at, and it's a bit sort of higgledy-pickledy. You go from autoloader, autoloader, autoloader to derp gun, derp gun. You go single shot, autoloader, 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 autoloader on that thing. So what they're looking to do is split it out, and going to bring in a new tier 7 American light tank. So this is the T71, which is identical in pretty much every way to the current T71, except it only has a single shot gun. So you will move through, and they're also talking about taking the Bulldog's autoloader out. So you will progress down this line without autoloaders. They probably ought to swap those two around, because the T21 is a single shot, whereas the T37 is an autoload. Anyway, whatever. So the idea is, at least from tier 7, there's a single shot line and an auto-loading line, which makes more sense in some ways to what's going on. So this is the single shot T71 CMD. This originally was being muted as being a premium tank, but they've obviously decided not to, and they stick it in now in the tech tree. So at tier 7, it's going to have 840 hit points. It's basically, as I say, the same as the T71 at the moment in the game, but it only has a single shot gun, which fires 145 penetration, 210 with premium, 150 average damage, dispersion of 0.38, which is pretty horrible. Aim time though is 1.9, which is very good, and aim time of 4.5. So yeah, you can see why they're doing it, but it still strikes me it's a bit too higgledy-piggledy. I would have thought you need to swap the T37 with the T21, and then you get much more logic between single shots and autoloaders, but what do I know? So a follow-up to the Japanese Tiger experience mission. So you remember you have to complete a variety of experience-based missions, basically up to the point where you have to get 50,000 XP as finishing top of your team. Doesn't matter whether you won or lost, although obviously you get more XP if you win. But you could, as long as you finish top, it went towards 50,000. You have until the end of the month to basically get that, and then you get the free. You get a free Tiger, Japanese Tiger, Tier 6 premium tank. Now I was speculating that because I'd already got it, what would that mean? Because it came with a 100% crew, and I thought that'd be quite useful already. It's useful to have in my garage or in my barracks for later on. Actually, I can happy to report that I did manage to complete it actually tonight, and here we go. There you go. There's the T1. There's the heavy tank number 6 crew that come with it, 100% in your garage. Well, in my case, in my barracks, and I got 1.5 million credits because I already own the tank. So you do get the crew, which is rather nice. So 100% crew if you manage to complete it, even if you've got the tank. So that's good to know. Thought you'd be pleased. So strictly speaking, this isn't rambles type things, but I just had to show this. This just made me laugh. I found it when I was looking around the replay site. So this is the proving ground. So this is where you get to, I guess it's like a trial thing for tanks. And for some reason, this guy, Panzer Killer or something, Panzer Fighter, who is a very, very experienced player. He's played 56,000 games, has a 65% win rate. He's a very good player. And as a result, Wargame just decided to screw him over. Look at the start. This T26 started on top of him. And it's a bot. I mean, it's one of these automatic machine things. It's not being controlled by a player. And it just tried to roll over him at the beginning, and that killed him. Just made me laugh so much. Yeah, so if you think you get screwed over by World of Tanks, think of that guy. Mind you, what the hell was he doing the proving ground with that number of games? I have no idea. Anyway, what makes me laugh even more is he says, "Thank you," and the player name, "You are reported. Have fun with your upcoming ban." It's a bot, you plonker. 56,000 games, not a brain cell amongst you. Blimey. So there you go, that's Rambles for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like, and even if you didn't, leave a comment why you didn't like it. All feedback appreciated as long as it's constructive. Anyway, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, also please consider subscribing. I much appreciate it, because I seem to have been stuck around the 800 subscribers for quite a long time. I did go up a few and then drop back down again, and seem to have recovered back to where I was when I started. So it'd be lovely to get things a bit moving. So, you know, get your mum, get your dog, whoever, to subscribe to the channel. All subscribers welcome. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, as I say. If you did, I've already said that, haven't I? Anyway, it's the way you come to watch my videos, isn't it? It's the concise, erudite way I communicate. Yeah. Anyway, enjoy your games, have fun. Hope the ×5 doesn't bring out too many nutters this weekend, and you get some good games in. And I will see you again soon. This is Gamer Dom signing out. See you soon.